will call this June 1st, 2026 meeting of the OGRSA Board of Commissioners meeting to order. Scott Mulder is set to do the prayer and invocation, but he had to leave to take care of something else. So I've asked Mr. Josh Riches if he would fill in, and he has gracefully accepted. I'm sorry. Everybody will please stand.
Our Father in heaven, we're thankful for this beautiful day, and we're thankful for the moisture that we've received. Father, we recognize that there was a storm, there's some power outages, and potentially some other damage that's done. We pray that everyone is safe, and that if not, that emergency personnel can get to them and make sure that they are safe, and the roads are clear. We pray, Father, that this evening, as we consider many matters for the OGRSA, that we'll be able to weigh those and consider those in a manner pleasing unto Thee, and do what's best for the customers and of the OGRSA and for the people of this county. We are thankful for the privilege we have to do so, and to take these matters into consideration. We pray that we can always live in a manner pleasing unto Thee, to glorify Thee and Thy Son. And say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you again, Josh, for doing that. We will now move on to the public session. So we will have a dedicated public hearing for items H, 1, and 2. Chris, is that listed on here? Yes, down in H. All right. So these are to receive comments related to topics that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone that would like to speak?
I would, please.
All right.
Good afternoon. My name is Johnny McCall. I'm the plant supervisor for this company. However, I'm off the clock at this moment, so I'm speaking as a member of the community. I recently watched the YouTube video of the meeting earlier in the week with the Finance Committee, and one thing of concern to me that I would like to ask you guys to consider and put a little more thought into possibly is the compensation study that was recently conducted by a third party, separate from this company but on our behalf. The Finance Committee recommended that it not go forward to the board, and I would ask that you give that some thought. As someone who likes to hunt, fish, boat, kayak, I know where our water comes from. I like to enjoy it myself. I know what the qualifications are for the maintenance guys that help maintain our facility, our pump stations. I know what the qualifications are for the operators who run this plant. The state says they have to have a certain level of license. That takes years to get to that level of license. I know someone with that level of license could go a lot of other places and benefit monetarily a lot more than what we can give them at this company. So I'm just asking that you look into that, look over what that study says. I don't know what those numbers were. I don't know what positions were affected by that. If it don't affect me personally, I'm not upset about that. But I know to keep qualified people at this organization and to keep this organization running like it should, we have to have money to both acquire those qualified people and to maintain them. I know there's 4 positions for operators at this facility. They all have to have an A-level license to be able to work by themselves, work weekends, come in at night when they're on call. If I've got only 1 or 2 qualified operators, it's hard to have one of them here every day of the week. So we need to be able to get those people and keep them here. But again, thank you for your time and consideration. I appreciate what y'all do.
All right. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? All right. Lauren, welcome. All right, so with that, we'll move on to item D, approval of the minutes from the May 4th, 2026 meeting. You all have those presented in front of you. I'd be happy to entertain a motion. Have a motion?
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion? No discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Moving on to item E, committee and other meeting reports. Reconstitution Committee and Executive Committee meeting of April 9th, 2026 is approved by the committee on May 14th. That is me. Acceptance of the, okay, I'm sorry. Chris, when you put stuff in red, that always throws me off. So we are still on task, I think, to get a lot of the work done of the Reconstitution Committee. I believe all of you know that we have retained two consultants. One is a rate consultant, one, what is it that, Chris, that First Tryon is financial advisors,
Yes.
planners to help figure out how the cities could unwind their debt so that anybody that has bonded indebtedness that uses sewer revenue as a pledge for that would know how to unwind that so that they choose down the road to hand those assets over to the new authority that could. Given that work is well underway, I know we have been contacted for quite a bit of information. I expect the rest of the cities have been too. We do not plan to meet again until August. I get that right? So that is my report from that committee. Are there any questions? All right, we'll move on to Operations Planning Committee meeting of May 21st. Mr. Scott Mulder's not here. Who else is on that committee?
Can you vote to accept those minutes?
Oh, yep. So you heard me give a brief rendition of our committee meeting on April the 9th. Is there a motion that we accept those meeting minutes?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Thank you, Lynn. Keeping me straight. Operations and Planning Committee meeting. Mulder's not here. Who else is on that?
I'll be glad.
Why don't you give us an update,
Sure
Mr. Dowell? What you got?
So we had our meeting, the Operation Planning Committee had their meeting on May the 21st. And basically, Mr. Mulder, Ms. McLean, Mr. Thomas, and myself were present, along with Lynn and Chris. Basically, the first thing we did was update on the current projects. And Ms. L.A. there gave us a rundown of the Seneca Forest Main replacement project. And it went online May the 13th. And then we talked about the rehabilitation projects. And we were looking at funding from the RIA. And then there was some discussion there, which I don't want to get into detail lengthy, but you can read about it in here. And the cost of the 30 manholes is about $900,000, and there's only one bid that was received. The consideration for the June committee meeting, the director stated things slowed down after the budget is approved and board members started taking vacation. He said he did not anticipate anything significant to talk about, and he was talking about we stated having a conflict for the July meeting date as the annual. He's going to be in Greenville, so we're going to address the O&P meeting for June. We might cancel it, we may not. The compliance matters. Chris gave us an update on the Speed Creek Forest Main break. There was another break in a section of the bad pipe that we've talked about over and over within this commission. And it was May the 5th, and approximately 12,000 gallons were spilled, and some of it was able to be recaptured. It was reported to the SC, South Carolina DES. And then there was a bigger issue that Kyle brought up. There was a problem. We went from the chlorine to the peracetic acid, that's what you pronounce it. And all of a sudden it was Ebola jumped, E. coli just jumped up out of the blue. and they think they found the problem. Briefly, is that going better now?
It is, the
Okay.
numbers are back down to where we.
Yeah, there was a big conversation, and it was a big scare, but obviously they found the problem, and it's 2 weeks later, it's still doing well. Cross Creek, there was some discussion about the odors and the ongoing effort to get this under control, find the source of it, etc. Talked about the 27th budget, and we'll be discussing that. That was moved forward to this commissioner. We'll be discussing about that. And then the Senate Bill 829, that was signed into law on May the 18th, and this bill represented by Senator Alexander for the Reconstitution Committee. So that all that legal work has moved forward, and then that will go forward from there. We just talked about some legal advice in executive session and some other stuff. And that was essentially about it. It was a good meeting. We got a lot done. And main points of our meeting will be brought forth in this commission today.
All right, thank you, Mr. Dial, and we need to accept those minutes.
We need to approve those.
Yeah, so, do we have a motion to accept those minutes?
So moved.
And a motion and a second. You take the second, Scott? All right, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the Finance and Administration Committee meeting, Ms. Celia Myers, May 26th.
Thank you, sir. Yes, you have the meeting minutes before you. As far as the update on current projects, I know Chris presented it in such a way that where I can just say ditto to O&P, and we can take a little bit of time. So we'll move on to committee action items. We did review the year-to-date financial reports and look at the fund transfer that we'll talk about today. Both of those did receive approval. I know we heard a comment about the compensation benchmarking study. That particular one was recommended as a 3-to-1 not to move forward. For the proposed changes on personnel policy manual, there were several different things. Some back to Chris and staff to adjust as far as the retiree insurance, to be able to maintain that, to keep that benefit there. I know further discussion as far as making sure current employees are eligible is going to be discussed today. And then sick leave and making sure that that is just an open option for everyone instead of dividing out that only family can have this many days and only employees can have this many days, just to have a group, a bucket of sick time for them. And then also the budget and fees were presented and recommended with approval. I know that's very fast, but I know we'll talk more about each of these items in just a few minutes. So unless anyone has any questions, I'll make a motion to approve those.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion or questions? All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item F, Secretary Treasurer's Report. Lynn Stevens.
The report's in your packet there. Between all the accounts, cash and investments, we have a combined total of $12,822,903. The reconciliations have been successfully done through April, and you should have a copy of the letter from the outside accountant showing that. And they are doing a wonderful job. I just need to keep saying that. And we have one CD that's maturing at the end of June that will be reinvested.
All right, is that all, Lynn?
That's it.
All right, we have a report from Lynn on that. Is there a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions? All right, all in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, like sign? Motion carries. Moving on to item G, presentation of discussion items. Item G1, considering canceling July 6, 2026 Board of Commissioners meeting. Chris Elliott.
All right, very briefly, typically after the budget's approved each year, we even have any of the two committee meetings. There's nothing that typically is ever covered. That I think the last few years we may have canceled or just not had committee meetings. So there's not necessarily a reason to have a meeting in July. July meeting, except we had that call meeting where there was a presentation from whatever the previous committee was before the reconstitution committee that met mid-month. So unless there's any feeling that, amongst the commission that we do continue to have that meeting as scheduled, I would just recommend that we postpone it, or not just postpone it, but cancel it until August.
All right, we have a recommendation. Chris is more or less telling us he will not have anything for us to discuss on that day. Is there a motion that we cancel the July 6, 2026 Board of Commissioners meeting?
I'll make a motion based on what Chris just said, and he's director, he knows. I would suggest we cancel the meeting for July.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Questions? Anybody want to have a meeting so you get your $60?
We go to Waffle House.
Hey, Waffle House. All right. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Item G2, sewer billing agreements. Mr. Lawrence Flynn, welcome.
Glad to be here.
I like that you got your seat lower. It makes me feel.
Hold on, I wouldn't deal with that.
Oh, dang. I know your billing rate's a lot higher.
So guys, something we had a conversation in the LOP committee. This is something that was a direction from this board to go back and have a conversation around what the new agreement looks like for phase 3 of Sewer South. So as y'all may recall, we met a couple months ago, had the conversation around, we recognized that Oconee County is building out the sewer infrastructure in the southern portion of the county. Sewer South Phase 1 is currently owned by them and maintained by us. Sewer South Phase 2 is currently owned by us and maintained by us. And this new addition, which is Sewer South Phase 3, required a new agreement with the county with respect to how we were going to manage and maintain their assets. And having gone back through and recognized that we had 2 different agreements dictating and governing how all of this was operating, the direction to me was to come back and draft up an agreement that kind of covers everything in one lump sum. And so that's what we have ultimately proposed. I think y'all have a copy of it in your packet. Has that been circulated?
I've not. I have it this year.
We can talk about it kind of at a really high level, at the really, really highest set of terms. These have not been reviewed by the county yet. We wanted to make sure that at least the board was familiar with what we were otherwise proposing. It's a basic operating agreement like we've historically done. So it's us effectively fulfilling all of the maintenance and management operations of the in-ground sewer assets between our ownership and theirs. And knowing where that line of demarcation is ultimately broken out. We have staffing that is responsible for making sure that we're maintaining those assets. Some of them are relatively new, so there's not a ton of work, but there is some pump station work that needs to otherwise be done. And so there are some staffing obligations that need to be in the area. And so in order to figure out kind of how we allocate our resources and what we are planning for in the future, there are a couple of things that I identified in the agreement. The first one being the amount of the remuneration that we're ultimately going to pay, and also building in some kind of benchmark amounts that would allow us to do some kind of very preliminary maintenance operations. So if you have a fitting that goes bad and it's less than $500, we're not going to charge them back for that fitting. But if every fitting in the system goes bad, we're obviously going to charge that. So identifying, we put a $500 max on that capital infrastructure cost. So just trying to come up with a number that ultimately makes sense. Also making arrangements for those few retail customers that are in the area. One of the things we really wrestle with is that, as you know, this board obviously owns and maintains that sewer treatment plant. You have some limited retail obligations as well, but you are setting rates and policies and charges for maintaining wholesale wastewater sewer treatment. There is some consideration on the way that this arrangement currently operates with the county, where they've effectively designated to you the decision on authorization to set rates and charges. They're effectively just the owner of the system, and then you do everything else. I don't think that actually works under state law, because you can't assign the legislative function on rate-making authority. So county council, as the owner of phase 1 and phase 3 of Sewer South, needs to be the go-between as the owner of that system and the ultimate service provider to those retail customers on the phase one of the system. And so they need to have their own rates and charges in addition to whatever you charge that they are ultimately responsible for. You can't dictate the rates for what they're going to charge as a legislative function. And so there's a little bit of some of that needs to be worked through. We'll probably need to have some conversations with the new county attorney about. And so that's something that just is a little bit of food for thought. One of the larger conversations that we had, and I think this is worth having a conversation as a board, we've talked about it a little bit, is recognizing the significant costs of sewer capacity operating and maintaining this facility. Expansions to sewer treatment authorization has gotten really, really, really expensive. And so while the growth is not there in the southern portion of the county, and pending any kind of considerations on the ad hoc reconstitution committee about how that process is going to work going forward, we don't really allocate sewer capacity among the members currently. There's not, you charge capacity fees, but there's not like a direct allocation of capacity. The concern and consideration should ultimately be, and I think this is something that the board needs to think about, is as you grow the southern quarter of Oconee County, if some major user of sewer came into that area and so they needed 150,000 gallons of sewer capacity, while you're going to charge them the capacity fees, that is capacity that you then lose as members in that facility that frankly is going to result in potentially future costs as the capacity gets allocated in this system. And so coming up with a determination where you're providing wholesale service to them, but you've identified a cap in capacity that is going to be designated to the county under the terms of these agreements so that they don't basically have the ability to absorb all of the residual capacity in the system without at least having to come back to the board and have some conversations. So I had preliminarily kind of thought about a 50,000 gallon cap as an authorized amount. Obviously, again, they still have to pay their capacity fees, but every gallon of capacity you assign to the county to provide sewer service on the southern portion of the service territory is a gallon that you lose as potential growth capacity in this treatment facility on a going forward basis. And so I think some thought needs to be given to whether or not, frankly, that's a concern that anyone has. And if it is, what is a reasonable amount of capacity to be able to assign under the terms of this agreement that they would otherwise be allocated. And so that's a consideration that I think just needs to be thoughtfully considered and probably needs to be something we need some direction on before we send this draft agreement back over to the county for their consideration. Because whatever it goes with, they're going to say, well, if you put this determination there for an allocation of capacity, what is that number? And that may be something that we need to get back with staff and think through kind of thoughtfully what actually we think makes sense. At some point, you also do want enough flow coming off of that system that actually makes it a viable portion of your system. I think we all recognize the limitations on flow in that area currently, but building towards some number so that you are not potentially giving away the future use of this facility to growth in the southern end of the county is something I think the board needs to be kind of thoughtfully considered. So I put that out there as it's kind of a major and material issue to otherwise think through and address. The other one that we also kind of started kicking through in the process of this, we also recognize how you're making arrangements for actually how you plan to bill them. You're doing that on the basis of Pioneer's billing data, and we don't actually have an agreement in place with Pioneer. They basically charge you $4 a tap, and that's the correct number, right, Chris?
Yes, sir.
That's not memorialized anywhere, so it kind of brought up this larger conversation around we probably also need to have a billing agreement with Pioneer that dictates, how we arrange for charges for those particular taps so that there is actually a designated number and it's not just a handshake. Which also then brought up some larger conversations around how flow data and billing information is actually received from the member entities themselves, which may also be a larger conversation for another day that we also need to have around some of the flow and billing data that the authority is getting out of the member entities. So that's a really, really kind of high level overview of where we stand. The capacity question being probably the largest one that we wanted to otherwise address. Chris, I'll certainly defer to you if there's anything else in there that you think is worth bringing up for the board kind of writ large to consider. But that capacity one is probably the largest and most material issue that I think the county is going to want to have
And we have an executive session scheduled for Lawrence to bring some of those details.
Yes, sir.
All right. Are there any questions for Lawrence from what he has told us thus far? All right, Lawrence, thank you. Lynn, you don't need a motion for me to say we accepted what Lawrence said, 'cause we might disagree with Lawrence later.
Would be the first time.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item H, action items. Public hearing regarding the resolution 2026-02, adoption of fiscal year 2027 comprehensive budget and fee schedule, exhibits B and C. So what we will do is we will open up the public hearing for the next fiscal year's budget. Do I need to take a motion to do that? Open the public hearing? Just open the hearing. All right. Is there anyone who would like to speak to that budget? Let's see here. All right.
If I may, the first thing that needs to be said too here, even though nobody may speak to it, is that but I wanted to make sure that it was on the record before anybody did have the opportunity, was that the budget that was presented and advertised publicly in the newspaper and on the website originally was for it was just over $7.1 million. That number was slightly revised. I think there ended up being a net deduction of a little over $6,000. So the final budget, the one that's under consideration for tonight, is slightly less. It is for $7.0996 million, give or take. So it is a little less than what was advertised. The reason for that change was the F&A committee not approving to move forward with that compensation study, which was included in the original budget. So that was removed, and thus the budget was amended.
All right, Chris, thank you for that clarification. So with that, we will close the public hearing regarding resolution 2026-02 and move on to item H2, approve resolution 2026-02, adoption of fiscal year 2026 comprehensive budget and fee schedule, exhibits B and C. That's got me listed here. However, Chris, I believe this is your budget. Why don't you present it?
Yes, sir. So, when you take a look, you see there's two documents that I'm going to reference here. One is Exhibit B and one is Exhibit C. Exhibit B is Resolution 2026-02 that Lawrence helped to draft to make sure that we comply with state law. This has the general overview of the budget, and also included in there is Exhibit A is the schedule of fees, so that'll be a consideration as part of this resolution as well. I'll touch on the budget in just a minute, but first the schedule of fees. There were not any what I would call a significant change in there as far as rates go. There was the 5% that was approved by the board at the May meeting to include in the volumetric rates for the wholesale users for residential, non-residential, and that also carried over to the retail users. So those rates are identified in that document. Those the schedule of fees is redlined with changes. There is also a few definition revisions in there as well. There's some language in the impact fee section that has been stricken because it's addressed elsewhere, namely in the impact fee policy that we have specific for addressing the collection of those fees and how they're governed. And then lastly, in section 7, there's a addition of appealing of fees that adds a little more information about how to go about appealing a fee, also including the reference to the impact fee policy, because there is a specific, if there's specific information in the impact fee policy that addresses appeals, and there doesn't need to be any confusion between that one and this one here. And then there's also a new section in there as well that addresses refunds, and in general with those, we will divert back to what the member cities' refund policies are for sewer. I know a lot of them commonly is a situation where there may be a refund that would be had. Is somebody's billed for sewer, but it's been determined that they had a leak in the house and the water did not go into the sewer, that oftentimes the cities, or not just a city, but a utility will give a credit and waive that sewer if it can be proven through an invoice by a plumber or someone that had fixed the line that can verify that it spilled onto the ground, it did not go into the sewer system for treatment. If it went into the sewer system, that, you know, oftentimes cities as well as us will have those fees paid because the water still was treated. There is a section in here as well that does address summer usage. And I don't know, does the cities, is there a summer rate that the cities use for sewer, a credit that they give for sewer? Walhalla does. All three cities do. So what with that, how does that affect what is passed to us? Is that deducted, the OJRSA rate deducted from those bills as well? Or do they pay that rate?
No, it's deducted, or it's not included.
What's, just for example, what would Westminster, they give a flat credit of, say, a couple thousand gallons, or is it a percentage, or?
I have no idea. I mean, I'm the city administrator, I'm not the billing clerk. Do you know what our fees are? I mean, we have it goes from April to November, and
With an average bill.
yes,
It's
and
the
so
average bill.
it's meant that for folks that water their lawns or fill their pools, that they get a credit on that with their wastewater bill for the reason you just stated, that water is not going into the system, it is going for some other purpose.
Okay.
But I don't know what our particular fees are or what that reduction would be. I can always get it and send it back to you.
That's fine. So I guess in that case, it may be worthwhile to, if this is ultimately approved as presented, to possibly request an amendment to this schedule of fees. That we would also follow each of the water purveyors' methodology for the summer usage as well.
Where do you have that delineated? within
I just have a document or a definition in here.
Yeah, I saw the definition, but I never found the term actually used within.
And
the
that's what
document.
I started going back and looking for. And I may have stricken that out of the back. Okay, wait. At the very back, it says, other than any provisions for summer usage, if applicable. That's in the refund section. And I'll just, for everybody not having to read it, I'll read it for everyone if I can, contacts will cooperate. Section 7.2, refunds. OJRSA uses local water providers for billing and collection of wastewater conveyance and treatment charges. These water providers, as agents for OJRSA, will adjust residential water charges on the same basis that they follow for water use, other than provisions made for summer usage, if applicable. So would it be, should that be stricken then? Not know, because I didn't know that anybody used it, and then I think a week or two ago I found out maybe one of the cities, I can't remember if it was Seneca or one of them, I became aware they even had a summer usage policy.
Oh no, I object to the phrase "the cities are agents of OJRSA" because we are not. I mean, that would be a legal classification of ours, but we are not agents when we bill our customers. Those customers are customers of each of the individual cities. We collect that, and then we are a customer of the OJRSA. We are not the OJRSA's agent in that collection process.
So there's no agreement with respect to that. The only thing that governs it is the language here in your omnibus agreement that deals with billing parameters. So I think that's what we're ultimately trying to get to is, do we need to contractually memorialize what that arrangement is?
I don't know. I mean, I guess we each have a policy related to that. we are deducting that usage before we calculate the bill that we send here. You and Lynn are validating the bill that we send to you, as, at least as the numbers we give you, is accurate. I don't know. I guess my question to you, Lawrence, is why does the OGRSA care?
Because how do they know that numbers are accurate?
Well, I mean, that could be for anything we pull. It could be for the whole amount that we pull, whether or not we pull it. How we calculate that would be the individual cities' own purview. I mean, I'm not against the definition being in here. The only thing I'm against is that the use of the word agent, because I do not believe any of the cities are an agent of this entity. Find a different word.
I mean, they are members, they're the owners of this agency.
But we aren't agents between this entity and the customers.
Yeah, for billing purposes, you are, because aren't you billing them directly?
Well, so let me clarify that, because I'm not sure that everybody at this table knows how everybody else, how each other bills. You mentioned that y'all collect and deduct. Westminster's the only one that does that. Everybody else has us on their bill as a line item specific for the base fee, and we're not included in your base fee collectively or the treatment. So I think that's how Westminster currently does it as well. So now I think there's an understanding that, you know, each of the cities, I think, handle that differently. So that's where I say with the word agent that they place on there that, you know, our fees, if there's questions about them, they refer them to us about our specific fee. So the way, I guess, we would view it is they're billing on our behalf, thus the agency relationship applies.
Well, each city's billing on their own behalf. We're your customer, they're our customers. So it'd be like a wholesale person selling entity selling something at Walmart. When I go and I buy something at Walmart, Walmart's not the agent of whoever put that product in there. I'm the customer of Walmart. Walmart's the customer of the wholesale.
Well, I'll find striking that.
Yeah.
That was language I just found online that worked.
Well, the only other thing I would suggest is if you're going to leave the definition in there and not reference it somewhere else in the document, it seems open. It needs to have a loop to it.
Well, that's
It needs
where-
to close.
So you took speaking of summer use specifically.
Yeah, I think it's fine to have it in there to acknowledge that we're each using a different calculation during the summertime that we might use otherwise.
Well, the definition, so I did go back and find that the definition from the definition section is used in the refund. So if we get rid of the portion of the refund that addresses the summer use policy, then we can get rid of the definition as well. That is the only place it's used in the document.
Any other thoughts from anybody else? Any thoughts from you on that? You want to think about it and have us come back and revise it later? Or at least have a
It sounds
chance to
like
look
there
at
are some questions around how billing is ultimately administered, and if that's the case, we need to make sure that they all tie out appropriately.
Okay.
But that's more of the definition, not budget in general.
Agree with that.
Yeah, but when Chris says that document is in force and effect with his budget resolution, then they are tied. And you cannot separate. Why don't we strike section 7 and then ask Lawrence to go back and review it, and then if we determine that it is needed, then you can come back and revise that portion of the schedule of fees.
I'm good with that. I'll strike all of that as well as the definition. I think we will need ultimately some type of a refund section that does point back to the cities, because we would want to use your policies for how we would do refunds anyway.
So for the benefit of everybody in the room, will you cite the page number in the section that would be stricken?
Using the page numbers on the top right, look at page 21 of 41, and then halfway down the page, section 7.2. It's all red. that entire section was added.
So we will strike 7.2 from this document for the purpose of today, and then if Lawrence reviews it, determines that we need to have something there, we will come back and amend this schedule of fees.
Yes, sir. I'm good. I'm fine with that.
You with that? Does anybody else have any other questions or concerns about striking 7.2?
How are they administered otherwise? Like historically, before this was
Speaking, how was what administered?
the refunds.
How the cities did it? They didn't come to us. We had no.
Yeah, I don't think we're
knowledge
talking about Chris, the OGRSA issued a refund.
There's been what, 1 or 2 times I think we did issue a refund where it was, and I think in this case it was one of the ones I can remember was with Wahala, where someone had paid a large bill. They had a leak while we were waiting for their plumber to provide us with justification. I think we had already collected or received the money from the city. They had already transferred it over to us, so we had to issue them a refund. This was a year or so ago, I think.
Yeah.
So that's what made it, we needed to think, well, we probably need something in there as to how to handle refunds. As it was, a new situation for us.
Well, I mean, does it bring up the bigger conversation around the timing of all of these bills? I mean, like what the billing process is among the authority and the member agencies on what the billing practices are?
I don't
Should
know.
that be handled in a schedule of fees or be a separate standalone agreement? Because the overarching agreement don't, your omnibus operating agreement don't contemplate like like this level of detail on billing functions. And so back to the same question, you are essentially serving as the agent when you're doing the billing function, but there's no agreement as to how any of that is otherwise being done.
Correct. Even though I still object to your use of the word agent.
Well, only if you're sending bill on our behalf.
But I'm not.
We are.
Sorry, some
Because we
of
put
you
it-
are. So the problem is about doing it as a standalone policy. Different ones of you are billing
Yes.
differently, and I think that probably brings up a larger conversation around probably needing individual billing agreements with the
With
authority
the-
as to how you're actually going through the process, and that could then that may streamline some of these conversations.
Okay. So perhaps we task you and Chris with putting that together in a draft format so that we can all look
I think that would make more sense as a standardized policy. That way, everyone is dealt with specifically as to how they're being addressed.
Welcome. Hope everything's all right.
Everything's good.
Okay, good.
Everything's good.
So, Scott, what we were doing is going through and looking at section 7.2 of, it's on the top right numbering, page 21, 7.2 refunds. We will discuss striking that from the current language and asking Chris and Lawrence to come up with a policy that is perhaps standalone.
I'm saying actually billing agreements among the members.
Yeah, okay, that's fine.
You know, word agent.
See, he didn't like the word agent.
I don't like that word.
I told him I didn't like the word.
Scared you and I thought alike on something?
Well, let's go get a beer.
I wish we really agree on the same thing.
That seems to be happening more and more lately. I don't know what that's going on.
Mr.
I would like to say something, fellas. I know you guys have worked all day, and I know you worked hard. If you're free to stay in here and listen to all this, but if you want to go home, there's no chains on your knees, okay? You can get to sleep if you want to, or you can stay. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah, there's no harm. You just walk out and walk back in. That's
Yeah.
all up to you.
I did it, so
But yes, you are certainly welcome.
Yeah, we welcome guests.
All right, so you've taken care of the 7.2. Is there anything else, Chris, that you need to bring up to us so that the board can consider?
Nothing with
Schedule
the
fees.
schedule fees. I think that covers everything. I'll strike 7.2, and I will also strike the definition for summer usage. And then we will revisit everything else once Lawrence gives us some thought as to what we need to do regarding refunds and how that should be worded. So that may be the first item that we have for the July F&A committee to consider possibly. Any other questions or comments regarding the schedule of fees?
All right, so I have some questions about schedule fees, but I want to make sure we go around the room. Some of y'all have already looked at this, discussed some of it in the F&A, maybe not all of it. Does anybody have any comments on the schedule of fees, not the resolution itself? All right, so the reason I'm going to bring these questions up now is because in section 2 of the resolution, it says that the budget plan, which is the schedule of fees, is hereby incorporated as a part of the resolution. So that means these two documents, once we approve the resolution, the second part of that becomes the operating plan for the authorities. And so because of that, I have probably a few more questions that I would have otherwise. Here we go. So when I look at, and I am on page 2 of 15 of the comprehensive budget request.
Okay, so you're not, okay, so you're in the budget.
Yeah,
Set page 2 of 15?
yes.
Okay.
So on that, I'm just going to bring this up and I'll come back to it because there's a couple of places where it's cited that I'm not real sure what the number should be. So the second or the first full paragraph there says funds that were to be designated for the salary and other expenses of the original budget, and this relates to the comp plan that F&A did not forward. That those funds would be allocated $25,000 to O&M contingency and $16,000 and change to capital projects fund. I just want to make note of that. And if you go over to page 3, if you add those two together, that's $44,000 and some change. If I go over to page 3, Chris, under user fees, the first paragraph, it says, including the proposed 5% increase, user fees are conservatively projected to increase by $33,000.
Yes, sir.
So those two numbers aren't necessarily, you're saying, foot each other or meant to match.
That's correct.
All right. So sticking with that sentence, so I'll let that first one go. Sticking with that same sentence, that the conservatively projected to increase $33,362, which was a 5% increase. Down in the footnotes, it says, footnote number 8, Willdan Financial Services presented to the commissioners on March 6, 2025, a report. And I remember that report. I remember taking issue with the report. I don't recall anything that I took issue with ever being brought back. Willdan was not retained as a consultant to the group. They were simply here doing a sales call and did an analysis for you. They did the analysis based solely off of annual financial reports. They did not use any other data, which those of us who have had rate analysis done know that is not the sole basis by which rate analysis can be done. They came up with a need, or Daryl, what's his name, said, hey, you guys need to increase your rates by 75% 2 years in a row, which I took issue with. I believe other members of the board did. So I went back and pulled the minutes just to be certain that my memory was correct. And there was even a disagreement between you and Daryl as to what your cash in hand was. So even when he calculated the 75%, he wasn't using data that you and he could agree on. Ms. Metlin then later said, after I think I exhausted the group with my questioning, she said, it is not recommended to raise rates by 75%. This was just as an exercise. So when I see this cited in here as a footnote, as if it is a matter of fact. It is not a matter of fact. It was a sales call that was fraught with erroneous conclusions in my mind, and the board never acted upon it, nor did it adopt it. So I do not believe it has any place to be cited within this document.
All right, I'll strike that.
So that would be footnote number 8, which is page 3 of 15. So my next question is, if you needed roughly $44,000 to do the comp plan, and it was not forwarded, on the next page, page 5, it says if the comp study had been adopted, then payroll would have had to increase $64,415. So those numbers don't match.
So the number that you see there includes, so the number you referenced on page 2, I think it was.
Yeah.
Page 2. That was in reference to all of the costs. So you had the wages and the benefits, retirement, workers' comp, FICA, Medicare. So that should have incorporated that. Plus you had it for pre-treatment as well.
So that's the 64,000, not the 44,000?
That should be correct. Yes, sir. That should be right. Would be the 64 would include the other numbers as well.
Okay, so
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
The committee, the F&A committee, the number 82,000 was thrown out there.
That included, the 82,000 included the merit increase as well as promotional costs that we had.
Because that was what was told to us as the cost of adopting the study.
That was the study, but the study also included the merit increase built into it as well.
So there was another number.
yeah, so Chris, it's getting a little difficult to tie down what number we're actually talking about. But I'm going to stick with the $44,000. If you go back to the user fees, generating an additional $33,000 by increasing the rates at 5%, but you're planning on putting $25,000 of that just into a contingency. Do we even need the 5% rate increase? Because ostensibly the 5% rate increase was to go to fund mostly the rate study.
Well, the 5%, the rate increase isn't a 5% overall. The rate increase was a 5% for the volumetric, which
Yeah,
is where
I get
you
that.
look at table 2, you see that has been a deduction or a drop in both the residential and non-residential rates of what amounted to, basically nothing for residential, but an 8.1% loss of revenue in the non-residential. So it ended up being, even though it was a 5% rate increase on those numbers, it effectively worked out to be a 0.5% rate increase overall for the user revenues that we project for the coming year. That's where the $33,000 comes from.
So what is your 5% revenue projected to be?
The 5% revenue,
The 5% increase is going to be how much?
that if you, let's see here, that's the 5% increase to the volumetric only generates the $33,382.
Well, that's what I just asked. You said it did.
It does, but effectively, when you look at it, it works out to be a 0.5% increase over what was budgeted from last year. So if you look at the line item,
Oh, I got you. All
does
right.
that make sense?
Yeah, so I got that. But, however, if you were going to take and drop $25,000 into a contingency just to use that money up, do we still need to do the 5% rate increase?
That I have to look at the numbers and figure out what that would be.
Well, I mean,
if it
you've got it going, 25 going into O&M contingency and 16,000 going into capital projects. The way you word that sentence is basically, I'm going to plug this money in over here since you didn't fund that. Well, if we're not going to fund that, then it looks like you don't need 5% rate increase.
So I guess the direction that was given to me from the F&A committee, and that's something we can discuss here today, with the full committee, was that they had approved the budget as presented short of the comp study, difference in the comp study. So thus, the money that was taken there was just reallocated into the transfer over to the capital projects fund and then the placing it in the
So I guess I would present that to the board for consideration. Do we need to have the 5% rate increase if that is going to go into a contingency number? Because what Chris had planned for that to go into additional personnel cost, the F&A did not approve that. So should we or should we not remove that from the rate increase? Because now if we were going to fund the rate study and you needed 5%, I'm for that. But now what I see here is you taking that money and just kind of plugging it somewhere else without a definitive need identified.
Well, if anything, we could take that $25,000 and transfer it over to the capital projects fund and not leave
Yeah,
it.
where I'm going is, and I get that you want to take that money, you want to put it somewhere else, but if it was presented as this is what we need in terms of dollar amounts for this budget to work, and that included a new additional funds for payroll, and then that was not approved, then you no longer need the 5% rate increase. That's the way I see it. So I would present that to the board to see if you agree or disagree.
May I ask a question? So Chris, when you take your numbers and you multiply it by the existing rate and then you multiply it by the rates with a 5% increase, what's the difference between those two numbers?
Repeat the question.
Don't worry about total budget numbers. What I want to know is, based on a volume of treatment, okay, your current rate before the 5% increase, what does it generate? And then what does it generate after a 5% based on that same volume?
I'd have to pull that up and take a look. If it's the same volume, it should generate 5%.
That's what I wanted to know. I don't think that number's 33,000. I think that's the difference in what we're talking about here, is just I hear it. I think that if you take the same volume and you multiply the rate with a 5% increase, you're going to generate more. Because if I just back in 33,000 divided by 0.05%, it's only 700,000. Our total revenue is way more than that. So I'm thinking what we're talking about is two different numbers.
Well, I mean,
I could be wrong.
Well, no, I agree, because I see three different numbers, and Scott just introduced a fourth, where I can't quite figure out what number is what. It's not clear. What does the 5% generate, and where would it be used for what?
If I can go get my computer, I can tell you if we took the change away what it would lead to, but I won't have that with me here now.
Okay, well, why don't you go ahead and we'll give you a minute.
Okay.
What's our total volume? Anybody know? Looking at the flow reports, do you have any idea on an annual
Do you
total?
memorize
billable
those flow reports?
I might look at them every other report.
got some.
Well, table two.
Well, it all depends on.
So that's
table
gallons
two's
per month.
got around 58 or 61.
What page you're going.
Two of 15.
So residential combined volume.
Yeah, but he's also going off an average volume, which his average volume keeps showing a decrease. But when you look at the overall bottom line for this fiscal year, we've got more money than we've ever had.
So 58, 716.
But we have more customers.
Yeah, that's what it is. I think that's going to continue.
Divided by 1,000.
I knew you did that.
And while Chris is looking that up, just for the sake of the employees that are still here, and I'm sorry I didn't say it before the other gentleman left, we have in our narrative, in our budget, and I'll read you what it says. It says the first version of the budget included the implementation of the Fine Grade People Compensation Benchmark Study as presented to the board on May 4th. The F&A committee did not accept the comp study, thus it was not considered by the board for adoption at this meeting. The study included general findings. The first sentence of this next paragraph said, OJRSA's overall compensation is generally competitive for a public utility. And then it uses that same language again, I believe, in another section. So what I'm saying is that study came back and said that you are generally being compensated at market rates. Now, I'm not saying that you don't deserve pay increases, but I wanted you to know that that is what is in this. And I hope you know that all the documents related to this entity are public documents that you should have access to anyway, so you should be able to go back and look at that report and the findings that were in it and kind of find where you belong. Because I hope at the end of the day that you guys still, even though that report wasn't forwarded to this group to consider, that you are very much appreciated by the board for what you do, and we have pushed Chris. In essence, I believe he did that study at our pushing to make sure you were compensated, what I'd say in a market rate.
Well, that study, excuse me, that study didn't go into like the skilled labor that's needed to provide for this facility. There's skilled labor. It's not just like off the street. You can't just pull somebody off the street to do this work.
Yeah.
We're operating with all four trades. We're doing electrical work, we're doing plumbing work, we're doing pipe fitting work, we're doing all this work, but we have to actually self-educate ourselves as well as educate ourselves within the plant, within the facility.
Something to add to that would be, how much money are we actually saving from not having to hire contractors because of the work that we're able to perform?
Well, I think what you guys do here is the same thing that each of the cities have on employees, particularly.
Add to one thing. So, as a ship with rising tides, right? So, I've heard this, just as a purveyor of those persons coming in new, I was not actually able to find this meeting on OJRSA because I went to the website of the meeting and it doesn't actually pull you to the YouTube site. The last video that was updated on there was 2025. So I don't know where this meeting that happened 2 weeks ago is actually on YouTube. So I'm trying to understand how that works.
The YouTube not in order, it's kind of scattered all over just whenever, but I don't think that's any control of this. That's just the YouTube.
In a general perspective of trying to understand the meetings and how they work as a person doesn't come to them all the time. But ship with rising tide would be someone said, well, we do not get compensated for this at this point. So if one person does raise, then as a ship with rising tide, we can all raise a little bit more because as a general statement, it does take more. As y'all say, the budget is more than it's ever been, and so it costs more than it's ever been for anybody who ever works in any particular area. So.
Well, and also, and I appreciate that from all three of you. Also, this does not, even though that study was not forwarded, it does not take out any increases for next year. I believe what it does is it takes that study out, so you're not. They will still get a COLA and a merit increase.
We don't do COLAs.
So you do merit increase.
The way that we have done for the years in the past, the comp study typically would look at the COLAs and build those in as we would move forward. So that in between the periods we do the comp studies, we only do merit. There's no COLA in that time frame.
But this budget still has merit for the employees.
It still has merit for the employees, yes, sir.
So that money is still in here, even though that comp plan wasn't forwarded to the adopted.
Well, upon being hired in this entity, that was a big part of the onboarding. How would you say that? A promise as to how this would come forward and be a big change as to where we're going to be looking at in the future. So just things to be noted between me and specifically one other person that was going to get hired at the same exact time. We both had this discussion as to what that means for our families and ourselves in the future. So.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming in and sharing that with us.
Thank you.
All right, so let's get back to what 5% generates.
If we take the 5% out entirely and stick with the rates we have for the current year, we would lose $199,618 because the flow overall has decreased.
That's what I want to know is if at the same volume, don't worry about a decreased volume.
That's
at the same
volume. Okay, so, well, the thing is, I gotta go back and now look at two separate years. Because the volume I have for the previous year, the one that we looked at that has then dropped over the last 12 months, I'll have to go and look at that.
Forget it. I mean, am I not being clear what I'm asking for?
I get it.
Because if it's dropping by $100 and something thousand, that means if at the lower rate, right, at the lower volume, what I'm trying to figure out if X at this rate generates Y, at X with the new R rate 1, what is Y? Does that make sense?
It does. I'd sit there and have to calculate what that would be. So, I'd like to think, the whole thing with the volumetric that I mentioned before was I'd like to think that whole thing is a fluke because I can't quite figure out how we gained customers yet lost, 30 some odd, I think, however many millions of gallons that we lost last year versus the previous year.
So how do you where does that $33,000, how are you calculating that? Like because this very clearly states, including a 5% increase, user fees are projected to increase by $33,000.
So can I come show you this? I think
Well,
that'd help.
if you have a way to put it on the screen, I don't want you to show me anything independent that the rest of the board can't see. So if you've got the ability to put it up there.
So it sounds to me like at the same volume, the rate would generate more than $100 and something thousand in new revenue. Is that what it sounds like based on his answer?
Yes.
So you have at least more than $100 and something thousand in revenue, but because of the volume decrease, it's only showing an increase of total revenue of 33,000. So I think you had asked the question earlier, how is 5% only generating? I think it actually generates well over 100,000 based on the equivalent volume, but because the volume's down, it's only generating 30-something thousand.
Yeah. I still don't, and that is probably more helpful than what Chris said. Chris, I don't mean to disparage you when I say that. What I struggle with though is, do we really believe there's going to be a net decrease in volume coming to this plant in the upcoming year? I'm just thinking about all the growth in housing, the number. I can't. We get those permits that get approved by the OJRSA. They come to us. That's how we know. Okay, that's a project that is going to happen. Once they show up, they pay the fee here. Usually, it doesn't grow any moss or fungus, whatever you want to call it. I'm doing like Lawrence. I'm mixing my metaphors here. Usually, once they pay that fee, that project is moving. And I see how many of those keep coming in here and getting forwarded to us. And that's Westminster. I didn't only imagine what's going on with you guys in Seneca, and then in particular with that Target development, in particular with a couple of the neighborhoods that are up toward Walhalla. So as those keep coming online, I'm challenged to believe that there is going to be a net decrease in that flow based off of just what I see under construction. And I know I shouldn't use intuitive feelings on that, but.
And I think that's what he's saying, is that they have seen that decrease and they can't seem to figure that out.
So I'll show you. So this, you asked about the rates. This is how we determine what the rates are.
Make it bigger, excuse me.
Okay. So this line here, you can see the top of it, user fees, and then underneath it, you see where I'm dragging here. That's the number of customers on average times the base fee that we anticipate receiving per year. This is the rate. So I think these have the rates from last year left in it, where I just changed it a minute ago. Here's the volume. Now all this stuff pulls data over from this sheet. So this looks familiar to Walhalla, because this is exactly what you guys submit to us. But I think all the, Westminster submits something similar to us. When I get that monthly information from each of the cities, I go and I enter it into the appropriate cell. So, in this case here, it's going to be yellow. So I know what information needs to be entered in. And at the end of each of these rows, you can see this one here, this is a negative number, what is that gonna be? So that's Seneca's non-residential volume shows a decrease from last year. This is from the average. So as you start looking down, you see the numbers, you'll see how many of them are red. And this again is data that we get from the cities based on the number of customers plus the volume that's reported to us each month. This is compared to the information that was provided to us from the previous year for that same period of time. So thus, year one was a number, year two is just what you're looking at, and it's a smaller number.
How does that relate to what you give us on those flow reports? How much flow are you getting? What's the delta between the flow you receive and what we collectively report to you as?
Lynn would have to answer that because she's the one that keeps up with the information that you all receive. So you take, I'm assuming, I'll let you speak for yourself here, but
Okay, I'm sorry, ask again.
So we get those flow reports periodically from you. And the flow report, I'm guessing, because it also includes whenever it rains, it gives us the rain total.
Actually, I don't do those reports. Those are the ones that Amanda does.
and that's a separate, the one that is once a week, that's not even used for billing at all. That's just
I know it's not used for billing. I was just asking you what's the delta in what you say the flow is coming from each city versus what the cities are reporting to you as usage. I'm imagining there's a delta there
it's the
because you've got rainwater and other I&I.
we don't consider that. That's not a factor in the metered use anymore. So the numbers we get is exactly what we base our fee on. Factors, it doesn't factor I&I at all into it. So just, for.
I get that, Chris. What I'm saying is you have a flow report and it gives you a number and you have the reports that collectively report all the city data for what we are telling you was the usage. If you take the flow data off that report and you take the usage data from each of the cities, what is the delta there?
That I'll have to look that up and see. You're talking about the net I&I into the system. I'll have to look that. We don't compare it, and I don't know that there's a way to do it because they're based on two completely separate calendars. We're basing the information we receive from you guys based on the billing for a month at a time, whereas these are based on 7-day blocks, continuous 7-day
You
blocks.
can get close though. You can see when the billing dates are coming to, and then just pick your closest. Get a pretty good estimate.
Yeah. Well, and you don't need to do that now. So that's
No, that
just
would
another
take
set
a
of
while.
another set of data. All right. So you're saying that the 5% increase generates 119,000.
So just pull one up here from Seneca. This is the information, an example of how we receive the information. And it's the same generally for each of the cities. So we get the number of customers, we get the volume, how much the base fees have been collected from us by the city, and how much of the volumetric is collected. And down here is the total sum.
So 184,000. I mean, just for that month alone, a 5% increase, just rough math on the volumetric fees collected would be $9,300 just for that month. Times 12, again, I know it's not, we have shoulder months and all that, hot, cold, great, but that's $111,000 that 5% would generate just on the volumetric if we did that every 12 months. So just from Seneca. So I think that the 5% volumetric increase generates well over the 30-something thousand. It's the loss of calculated flows that they have factored in that lower the total revenue and only generates 30-something thousand worth of increased revenue.
So you can look here, just like on this sheet here, you look at this. So again, this one is looking at Seneca's non-residential flow. So this was last year. I'll zoom in more so you can see it. This is what we received on average per month from Seneca the previous 12 months. This is the 12-month period that we use to determine what our estimated revenue is for the coming year. So you can see that's where that that difference is. Whereas, there's a little bit of a gain from the volumetric with the residential in Seneca. There was a pretty considerable reduction. And with us, because we have two separate rates, the larger of the two rates is the non-residential. So using current year's numbers, residential is $5.66 per thousand. Non-residential was $7.74 per thousand. So as you drop that down, it's gonna, we have a different rate for the different types of customers. Does that help you, Mr. Bronson?
It does. So if I were now to look at that and say each percentage increase that you have is going to generate about $23,800, I still go back to the plug number of 25 and 16. So on page 2 of 15, where you say since the salary comp study wasn't funded at what you calculated, you're gonna I'm gonna say plug 25 into contingency as well as 16 into capital projects. So that's roughly $44,000. That's roughly 2 percentage points.
Correct.
That you could reduce the increase by. So rather than have a 5% increase, you could have a 3% increase and still be made whole.
Well, and if you would like for me to do it, and I don't know how you would be able to want to move forward with approving this, if it getting to be done, or if we have to have a call meet to ultimately do it, would be for us to break out with a net zero without just removing essentially $25,000 that would be otherwise used to contingency to adjust what that rate would be. But it's going to adjust both those rates, which is going to be the residential and the non-residential volumetric. But is that what you're ultimately?
Well, I mean, I'm making that suggestion, but I think it's ultimately up to the board to say whether or not, as a majority of the board, there's an agreement to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've introduced a discussion point that, given the way he's allocated those numbers in the budget, we could drop the increase from 5 to 3% and still keep the same budget.
Correct.
Well, let me plug in 3% if I may. So we should be able to see exactly what that is. So calculator. So 3% increase to the current 566 times 1.03 is $5.83. 5.83. And then non-residential is, let's see if I know what that was off the top of your head. Is that is it 774 currently? Sorry. 774 times 1.03. 1.3 equals 797. 797. So that is going to be about 60,411 short, using 3% increase for both of those.
In the budget.
Yes,
And the two numbers you were talking about added up to what, 44?
And change.
So surely we can find another 16 grand to drop into 3% instead of 5%.
I think so. I guess where I would challenge you all to look, when we receive these monthly financials, I'm looking at a healthy organization financially. And I know we haven't been that way always, but we are right now. I see the way, and I'm not critiquing Chris of this, I'm just stating as a matter of course, the way Chris calculated the numbers that got us to the current budget And the way he's calculated them now are essentially the same. However, when you look at our year-to-date financials, we're set to exceed revenues in your budgeted and still be on task for expenditures, meaning you're going to have you're going to finish the year with more revenue than what you projected by quite a bit in some categories. So if that's the case, even if you have some net decreases in flow, which is also what you projected last year, then I think if you adopted a budget that did not have, I'll say, 2 of the 5%, I think you still end up a year from now, based off what we've already seen, based off the growth in the county, that it still comes out to a net positive on revenue versus expenses. That is just my view of it. So anyway.
I just, for the sake of the exercise, I just went ahead, did a 4% increase, and that gets us to the minus 11,669.
Okay, so can we perhaps decide whether or not we want to stick with 5 or go with some other number? I still have some additional questions, but my additional questions are going to come back to this. And I'm okay if we stick with 5. I'm looking at what we have here and what was stated that I believe that amount would generate, which I now see as a different number.
I mean, let's look at it, dude. I mean, we're at 0.007% of the total budget that we're sitting here for how long arguing about. I'm good with 3% instead of 5. And I mean, if you want a motion to that now, see how the rest of the board feels so we can continue discussion. But I mean, really, we're at 0.007% of the total budget that 2% that we're talking about generates.
Okay. Does anybody have an objection if we were to go with 3 instead of 5?
I'll make a motion that what's the actual item up for discussion? Is this
So we're still looking at the fee schedule, and I still have some more things I want.
Then let's hold off on the motion and let you continue with yours until we incorporate all of this.
Okay. All right. Anybody object to that right now?
I've got a question. I'd like to see, I'm a little bit newer to this. The volume decreasing, you mentioned it decreased last year. Can we see like a 10-year trend to see number of customers and volume? Is this an anomaly? Is this something, I'm just curious for my own, I know there's a lot of things that are like weather driven on the utility side. I'm just would like to see some data.
Well, I don't have anything that goes back that far. The reason why I say that is it wasn't until fiscal year 24
That's right.
that we started receiving the flow data from the cities. But I do have some information from the years, maybe the year before that was provided from the cities. And it was just general information to help me when we were making that conversion to go from the pro rata model to what we have now.
Okay.
So I did actually put together some of that earlier today to kind of look at the trend to see what that was, and I can provide that. I can provide that to you.
Yeah, I'm curious on that.
All right. So the next thing, Justin, I don't want to step over you.
Nope, we're good.
Thank you. So the next thing that I wanted to bring up is on page 5 of 15 of Exhibit C, and Chris, I don't disagree with this, so I don't agree with this. I want to just challenge you on it.
Okay.
And give you a chance to say your piece over it. But under a conveyance system, it says the OJRSA leadership staff has determined there was not a need for additional sewer CCTV cleaning and assessments during 26 and 27 because funds are not yet available to perform design and construction, etc. So you're saying you would stop evaluating your system because you don't have funds to fix whatever you might find?
It's an interesting point that you bring up with that. So it's not that we don't want to do it. We would like to do it, but we currently now have. So I think I spoke maybe to the O&P committee about this. Did I speak to you guys? So we currently, identified or CCTV'd everything that's on this map that you see that's highlighted, minus this part here that has to do with Sewer South. We just finished the SKIP project, which was the rehabilitation of anything that you see here that is shown in green. The next line that we went to, so this was what, I think 2 years ago, Kyle? We CCTV'd out the plant about 30 line segments up. I don't know how many feet that was, but that's primarily all 36-inch diameter line. When we got the engineering report back for that, it was roughly, could be up to $8 million to do that rehabilitation work. Well, when we got that back from them, that was in the next fiscal year, so we already had led a project to do CCTV and clean and smoke test, what you see here in pink. So we are at the point now where we're currently moving forward. We do have that budgeted to put that in together for a packet for a project to move forward. But the risk that we run into, now that we're going to be, essentially 3 years behind, the system doesn't just stop deteriorating. So we felt if we take that money, knowing that there's going to be 3 or 4 more years from the day we do the CCTV work until we possibly could move forward with putting a project out there, if everything lined up in consecutive years and we had the funding to do the project, then if we don't move forward with the project, it's going to require it to go be done again to identify what may have taken place in that time in between as far as degradation goes that might need repair work. Does that make some sense to you?
I hear what you're saying, but I also, by not evaluating your system, you may have some hole out there that is leaking your delta and what you expect to receive and not, and by not going out and looking at your system to know what it is, whether you have the funds to correct it or not is a completely different topic.
Yes, sir. We didn't, we did the same thing last year because it was roughly $250,000 to $300,000 to have that work contracted out. So we made the internal determination while we would like to even move forward with doing the CCTV work, even if we had projects lined up and put on the shelf for an engineer, we felt, Kyle and myself and staff felt that $250,000 to $300,000 could go to better use for replacing equipment that we had at the facility. So it was.
And you're not required by your CMOM to continue doing those analysis of your system?
We have a 10-year period that we need to do them, so we can catch back up on them. It's not that we have to do a 10th every year necessarily, or that we have to do. We can do them all in a 10-year time, the same year.
Okay, well, I'll just let it stand that I object to that cessation of evaluating your system. I think you need to do it. I think you need to know what you have. In the event there's something out there that you don't know that is big, you're not going to know it. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is on page 4 of 15 of Exhibit C, the last sentence in the first paragraph under Wholesale Operations and Maintenance Fund Expenses. It says, however, the agency will continue to prioritize work associated with the 2021 DHEC DES consent order, which I don't know that you really are doing that if you're not evaluating your system, my opinion only, and restoring full functionality to Conross Creek Waste or Water Reclamation Facility over projects solely focused on serving growth unless directed by the Board of Commissioners. What you're saying is if I don't get this additional money, we aren't going to look at growth. And I think that is an issue. You have projects coming down the pipe. You've got some that are being planned. You've got, and if I just use the big one, you've got targets set up with a bunch of land available ready to keep going. And you already know you've got capacity needs for that to build out at what it could build out, not mentioning anything else that could come up or that is, like I said, already in the pipe. If you just turn a blind eye toward that, then I believe you're going to miss on additional revenue that you could otherwise have because you aren't paying attention to what could be some very easy wins with brand new infrastructure. So when these things go in, at least where they're going in, it's brand new. You won't have to touch it probably for 2 decades.
If I may respond to that. So with that project in particular, I've been in communication with, in this case, City of Seneca representatives as well as the developer, and there is consideration from multiple parties about how that is going to be done. So that is being considered. It's not necessarily being considered in this budget, but it can be considered through an amendment. We've talked, we have spoken in committee possibly about using impact fee funds for some of these growth related projects, whether they're out in the system or the plant. So they are considered whenever we would do a pump station evaluation, just like with what we're doing with Speeds Creek, we're considering growth with that. That's also a consent order related project.
But that sentence that you typed there doesn't fit what you're saying. You're saying some nuanced, but you're saying two different things.
But
what you're saying here is different than what you wrote.
Well, I'm stating that we're prioritizing consent order and treatment plant matters versus growth related projects only. So where it makes sense to include a growth related project in with a consent order or plant matter.
But you
then,
didn't
of course,
use that
it can be
language,
considered.
and when we adopt this becomes your Bible. So by putting it in the way that you put it in, it's not saying it the way you're saying it. So anyway, I object to that. So
let me ask, how
I'll
would
just
you
let the
recommend wording it then, Mr. Bronson?
I think you need to look at whatever comes your way with an open mind. And when you put this in here, you're stating that you're not. So I'm not going to tell you how I would wordsmith it to say something else. I just wouldn't have included it. You've got an obligation to whatever growth happens to accommodate it if you can, and if you can't, to let whoever may be out there know, whether it's one of the entities or another developer, what the constraint may be. That's my opinion. I'll let that go. I got it on the record. And then the last thing that you skipped over and I did not see discussed anywhere else, and I am a prolific reader of minutes, is going back to Exhibit B, page 33, where you have increased the impact fees by 44%. And that was not in your summary of what increased in the budget.
That actually was approved last year. So the board had approved that increase for fiscal year 26, 27, 28. That's in the fees that were
But a
approved.
board can't approve the next board's budget.
Well, if that's the case, but those fees in advance were approved prior year. That's why there was nothing changed, as they were approved as part of last year. So it's a 3-step increase to get us to the 100%.
Because it's absent in one of these charts. It's not in the other. But you would be going from $13.66 to $19.70. That is, in my mind, that is just grossly too much. I do not recall that being a part of the budget. I won't argue that it was. But also, whatever we adopted last year, you could not hold us to adopting by right this year. We have to consider this budget on its own merits. And increasing those impact fees by 44%. I already know what some of the impact fees being paid around town are. They'll skyrocket from that. So, I am going to make a motion that they not be increased whenever we get to that point. That they be left where they are. And since I could probably sweat everyone out of here until you're angry at me, I'll conclude my comments, Martin. Marty gave me the stink eye twice during all that.
Sorry. It's on the line.
All right, so we have, you've all heard some of my consternation about this budget in here. I lied. I'm gonna go back. You have the impact fund, you have the wholesale impact fund to which you have no appropriation, no appropriated expenditures. You have a laundry list of things that are needed in the back. Why did you not fund some of that?
Because those funds can only be used for growth-related projects, not if it's for upsize for infrastructure. It has to be if we're replacing.
And none of these on here meet that criteria.
They would, they can, but I've been given no direction. And again, with us internally, our need right now is to get the plant back to 100% of its rated capacity. We cannot do that now. Also addressing the consent order. Again, where I state that we're prioritizing those items. If they're, we're discussing a potential project that would serve that north side of the target development that would be able to be used at 100% with impact fees because there's no line currently serving there now. We're still in the early stages of how that project would work and how it would be funded, if it would be entirely funded by us or who would do that. So it's not that no growth is being considered, it is being considered, but at the same time too, we're being somewhat mindful of what other needs we may have in the future. We also, we know we have some pump stations that need to be replaced, Seneca Creek being one of them, which would be a fairly substantial project. Impact fees would be eligible to be used for that to pay for the upsize of the
Well,
station.
you have that one listed as 1B and included in the budget. No.
That's
Could
right.
you not use some of those impact fees to begin addressing that issue?
We may could use them to begin the design of that station, but we would not have the $3 to $4 million of O&M funds that it would take to replace that station without the impact fees. Because Mr. Flynn addressed me if I'm wrong, but I'm correct in what I'm saying. Those funds cannot be used for anything other than.
Well, I wasn't presuming that they would be used for anything other than what state law would allow. I look at that list and I see a lot of things that I believe would fit. Not going off what I believe, but that you have more no's than you do anything else, and yet you have money that is sitting on the table and you choose not to act on it. That's what gives me heart. So I'll let that rest as my input and let it be in the minutes. We can move on. So are there any other questions, comments about the fee schedule? All right, I'm not hearing any. Are you still thinking about it? Mr. Dial's the only one who gave me.
Well, I depend on the city administrators that I work for, so I'll go with whatever you folks decide. I'm going to support your cities.
So I don't hear anybody saying they have any additional questions or comments. Okay, I want to make sure. So now would be the proper time to consider a motion to approve the comprehensive budget and fee schedule. Is there a motion?
So both of those documents are included under the one resolution.
No. You have the fee schedule, and then you have the resolution. So you have to adopt the fee schedule first, and then you adopt the resolution, which incorporates the fee schedule.
I'll make a motion that we adopt the fee schedule with the modification that the volumetric rate will be decreased from a 5% increase to a 3% increase.
All right, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
May I ask about the impact fee portion of that as well, since that is.
Yeah, well, I was going to now bring that up after we made sure everybody had that. clear. Is there any question or discussion on the motion and the 3% versus 5? All right, I would like to make an amendment that the impact fees be kept at their current rate rather than increased by 44%. So that schedule is on page 33 of 41 of Exhibit B. And though they're not listed there now, the current fee is $13.66 per gallon and $4,100 per 1 ERU, as opposed to what is listed under FY27. So I make that in the form of a motion as an amendment to your motion.
Let me ask a question regarding that. Would you also propose the striking of the FY28 from that as well?
Well, I think you do that when you get to 28. I don't think we can pass FY28's budget here.
So I'll remove it then from the schedule of fees.
Well, I mean, you guys, I've made the motion and we don't have a second, so you might be fine.
Second.
I'm glad you came through for me there, Scott. So I have a motion and a second. And so the way we'll do this, is there any discussion on that?
That was a second on the amendment, right?
That was a second on the amendment. So what we'll do, is there anybody else that would like to make an amendment to the original motion?
Probably need to vote on your amendment first before the others are introduced.
Thank you. So what we'll do is we'll vote on the amendment, which is to keep current impact fees where they are. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. So now that we've amended Scott's motion, which is to adopt the schedule of fees at 3% rather than at 5%, is there any further discussion on that?
Do we have any idea what the numbers are gonna look like with both reductions? Because I know we said 3%, we have numbers for that, but I don't know how you projected revenue using the impact fees. And
No.
how much that's gonna reduce. Anything?
Well, it'll, both of them will have to be amended to what the new fees would be. And I can sit here and try to look at what that would be now.
It would be less, but
All we
did
do-
you really calculate that number based off of an anticipated amount, or did you?
Anticipated.
We can just,
Or
we
impact
can just
fees.
pass the budgetary portion with the amendment that the number be adjusted based on the new fee schedule, and then we can do that.
All right, so is there any further discussion on the schedule of fees? All right, here none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? All right, Ms. Myers dissents. Motion carries. Just hoping you'd be home for it. You got barbecue tonight?
Yes, chilling.
Okay, I apologize. That was the motion for the,
Amended original motion.
okay.
So that motion, we adopted the schedule of fees at 3% rather than 5%,
And the impact fee reduction.
Okay.
which
I just
also
wanted to make
includes.
sure I was thinking correctly on that one. Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Okay, so now moving on to item number 3, approve resolution 2026-03 to adopt and update the OJRSA personnel. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped one. Approve the resolution 2026-02, adoption of the fiscal year 2026 comprehensive budget fee schedule. I thought we just did that one.
That's why I asked.
You separated them out in the fee schedule first and then the budget second.
Where's the resolution?
It was together. He split them.
Oh, I split them. Kristen split them.
That's why I was asking earlier
Yes.
when it was.
Should it not have been split?
Hence my reason for saying no.
No, so we did, the fees fulfill the budget.
The fees fulfill the budget. Okay. Was anybody going to vote against that resolution?
Well, that's the reason I said no, because I didn't
You didn't want it. Okay.
I mean, we could have made a motion to approve the resolution with those amendments in there as well. But I think from a rules of order standpoint, how we handled it to adjust the fee schedule is fine. And now we'll need to, when we make the motion on the resolution, we'll need to incorporate the amendment, or the motion needs to be incorporated to show the changes to the fee schedule. I don't think it's an issue.
Is there a motion?
I will make a motion that we approve resolution 2026-02, which will be the adoption of the fiscal year 27 comprehensive budget and fee schedule as amended during the prior vote, with the modifications to the contingency fund adjustments as necessary due to the reduced rate increase, and any other adjustments as required as a result of any revenue decrease from the fee schedule. In addition, the impact fee numbers will need to be adjusted based off the adopted fee schedule with the stabilization of those rates with no increases in the impact fee fund. And I think that's it. Did you follow that, Lawrence? Was that a very well thought out ramble of a motion?
That was a good motion.
Did we capture it?
And to
Lynn, did you get it? Because I don't think I can remember what I said.
let Mr. Mulder catch his breath, I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion or questions as to what we'd be voting on?
Lynn, I just can't wait for these minutes to come out, okay?
I hope you all are.
It'll make us look a lot smarter than we really
I'll-
are. She always makes me look smarter than I really wasn't. So thank you.
I'll be giving you a book this time.
All right, let's call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. You're opposed? All right, Celia's dissents.
Not because of not reducing rates, not because of anything else. I just like to see the numbers before I. That's all it is.
All right. So we will now move on to item H3, approve the OJRSA Resolution 2026-03 to adopt and update the OJRSA Personnel Policy Manual. Chris Elliott.
Right, in the package, you have a copy of the fully reviewed personnel policy manual that incorporates the recommendations from Kerry Kavanaugh, as well as Grant Close, our labor attorney, as well as what was approved and considered by the F&A committee.
All right, are there any, or is there a motion? I have a motion by Ms. Myers. Is there a second?
Second.
And a motion and a second. Are there any questions for Chris?
Lawrence, I know you're not technically a labor attorney, but did you also?
I'm not, I wouldn't even call it technically a labor attorney. I am not.
But did you review it in any way as well?
I pretty much deferred to Grant on that.
You feel comfortable?
This is what he does, and if he's reviewing it, comfortable with it.
Did the change get made to where current employees will still be eligible for retirement?
Yes,
And
ma'am.
then anyone new would have that year?
Yes, ma'am.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further questions, discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item H4, approve resolution 2026-04, transfer funds from wholesale operations and maintenance funds to capital projects fund. Exhibit E. Chris.
All right, Exhibit E in your book, let me open that up. What we have, and this is a question I had to ask Lawrence for clarification on. So we currently have in our financial and accounting policy a methodology for approving a transfer of monies between funds under certain circumstances. However, in the resolution that Lawrence drafted that we just considered this coming year, plus the one that you're operating under for the current year, it does not cover the type of transfer that we were seeking to look for, which was to be a transfer of retained earnings or fund balance from the wholesale O&M fund to the capital projects fund. So that's what we're seeking here by this resolution that Lawrence crafted, which in your document, it just has a blank under paragraph D that's dated blank. The date that was approved was June 2nd, 2025, and that is in the resolution that will be executed. year if approved.
Is this money that's been budgeted this year for projects that are ongoing that won't be completed by year end, and you're
Well-
just setting the money aside, capital projects to complete them next year?
Some of that is exactly that where we may have had a project that came in, we anticipated it at X amount, it came in under budget, but the big chunk of it would be for the generator transformer switch project that we budgeted for this year. The lowest bid we received was $400,000 over what we budgeted. So it would be transferring that to that restricted fund to be used for capital projects in the future.
Lynn, did we get a motion on that? Or is there a motion?
You said there.
There wasn't a motion.
Okay. Oh, there wasn't a motion. I'll make a motion that we, approve resolution, 2026-04, and that's approving the fund transfer and the other matters that were discussed.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Second. Is that Scott Parrish?
Yep.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, we just went through 45 minutes discussion on $40,000 worth of needed monies for next year with a rate increase, yet we have a surplus of over $500,000 that we're transferring into an account for future projects. Would that not have been beneficial to use for next year instead of a 3% increase?
I don't disagree.
But if I may I speak to that?
Sure.
So if you do look in the budget, that money that's being transferred, we're still in this, I just got to remember the new name of it, the Capital Projects Fund. We'll still be using fund balance out of that account to balance the budget because with the projects that we have for the coming year to get the plant back up to the 7.8 million gallons per day rate capacity. So if it's of any, if it's of any assistance to help understand that.
Oh, I mean, I don't disagree that putting money aside that you had left over to fund future capital projects that we need, because everybody knows we need them. But that's still a lot more than what we need in order to balance the budget is all. So, but I mean, that ship has sailed at this point, I guess.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, like sign? Motion carries. Moving on to item H5, approved submission of draft OJRSA sewer use regulation, Exhibit F to the South Carolina Department of Environmental Services for consideration. Chris Elliott.
This is really just a formality, and it was actually discussed in committee and it was in the April meeting, and it was meant to go on the board agenda for consideration for the May meeting, and I forgot to put it on the agenda. So it was essentially revising the sewer use regulation to incorporate a few requirements that we have to include for the NPDES permit that was just reissued to us in November. But it also, while we were having to open it up for DES review, we figured we would go ahead and address a few other things in there as well. It's just a continuation of we're trying to refine, primarily in this case, the FOG, Fats, Oils, and Grease program. So we have identified, and this is thanks to Dalton Justice in particular in this case, he's made recommendations that we include ways here that would allow us more flexibility to work with the owners of say, a restaurant or any such development that would generate fats, oils, and grease, up to and including a different type of device. So we'll even give an additional option for device. So we have options besides the under the sink trap and the large in-ground interceptor. This would also include a third option for consideration, which is called a hydromechanical device, which acts more like an interceptor, but it's in a much smaller and more efficient package. We currently are able to approve those now by variance, but we would like to do it without having to do it through variance. We would like it to be included as a consideration in the regulation since we're having to revise it. So again, this is to approve it for us to submit to DES for their review. This has been reviewed by Michael Tranum and I believe Lawrence, and I think Lawrence has deferred to Michael's expertise on this. So that's where we are with it.
All right, is there a motion?
I make a motion, we approve the submission of the draft sewer use regulations to SCDES for their consideration and review.
We have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
And a second. All right. Lynn, you take the pick, you either got David Dial or Celia
Yeah, I
Meyer.
saw Celia first.
Sorry, Mr. Dial, we'll get you.
Oh, we're good, we're good.
Oh,
All
I've
right,
got
any-
him on other ones.
Any further discussion or questions? All in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to item I, Executive Director's Discussion and Compliance Matters. Chris?
I've got a few things here. We had the day after our last board meeting on the 5th of May, we had a force main break on the Speed Creek force main, our primary nemesis. That is currently, I believe they finished the survey work with that, and it's currently in preliminary design for replacement of that. The spill was about 12,000 gallons. It was reported to DES, and it was repaired by a contractor in a timely manner. We received a letter just today from the South Carolina Department of Environmental Services, magnifying glass, South Carolina Department of Environmental Services regarding industrial user permits. So everything is fine. It's considered to be a not substantial change, but it is going to require Allison to reissue new permit numbers to all industries, and this isn't us. This is a statewide. In fact, it may even be a nationwide thing because this has to do with an EPA electronic reporting rule requirement that requires every industry to have somewhat of a standardized, uniform statewide number that then rolls up to the federal government. So that will be something that we'll be working on, or she'll be working on between now and the end of July. Mercury and aluminum, I just today saw results on that, and we have no idea, I don't know if Kyle knows either, what the target is of what we're even trying to shoot for as far as any type of a level. So in our NPDES permit, we were, it was included in there to have a aluminum and mercury reduction plan, or to see if one would be necessary, I guess would be the better way to say that. Correct, Kyle?
Correct.
But as part of that, we had to go and collect the data. So we've done that at the treatment plant. We've done it at I think 3 domestic sewer use pump stations only, no industrial flow going into it. And we're working now to do the same thing with the industries. There weren't any surprises as far as anybody could alert us to of what we saw out in the system or at the plant. And we're waiting on the information to come back from the industry to find out if there's going to need to be anything done on their standpoint as well. The one thing, and I just say this as a matter of trivia, if nothing else, the one thing we got back and saw with the results, did you see these numbers, Kyle? Had to do with hauled waste, septage. Did you see them? So the numbers we got back from the samples that we took from septic tank waste was, the number at least, we don't know what the number is exactly, but it's a high number and it's with aluminum. So I asked Allison, what's the difference? Like, why would you see it there? And the only thing she could think of, and I guess it kind of made sense to us, is you've got years and years of buildup of solids in these tanks is being pumped out. And one of the sources of aluminum that she could think of, that she mentioned, was antiperspirant. So we don't know if people showering and their antiperspirant getting into the septic tank could cause these aluminum levels to be what we're seeing. But it was, again, just kind of interesting to us, and we'll continue to track and see where that goes. And then Kyle had expressed to the O&P committee, I think, about his initial concerns with the PAA, to the point where Kyle, I think, was feeling pretty bummed out. And I think he used the word to me that he felt like a failure, was the quote, because we made this conversion and Kyle was selling it at all the other utilities about how great it was. And then he started seeing his E. coli numbers start going up. So that we had discussions here as to whether we were going to put our chlorine gas back online for a period of time. Well, to the staff's credit, maybe even more so than Kyle's, I think that they recognized what could possibly be a problem, and it had to do with induction of air that was essentially causing or eating up that PAA before it had the opportunity to do the disinfection. So they made some changes with the way it's fed, and now we're back in the levels that we anticipated seeing all along. He was afraid we were going to have an exceedance even with the monthly average for E. coli, but we were able to meet that. So, again, that's kudos to them for the troubleshooting that even the experts that they brought in weren't able to exactly identify. So
You had to take out your little water feature.
Yeah.
Too much air.
So I covered that. Any questions about any of the environmental items? I'll keep moving on. Tablets or laptops for meetings. So this is, something that I noticed, especially on days like today, where Ms. Kelly, our records clerk, has to put together the agenda packets, and she literally can spend 2 to 3 or more hours putting these packets together with all the printouts. So I want to ask the board here if there would be any interest in us providing a laptop or a tablet that would have this information preloaded onto it. I see one head nodding or shaking now. Or if we want to just continue doing it the way we're doing it. As far as for the public, we don't provide those for the public when they come in. We make them all available online with the agendas. So is there any interest in doing that? Because there's the time component for us having to print them, as well as the physical cost of having to go through and pay for a copy from, is it Sharp that we rent the equipment from?
Yeah.
I mean,
I don't want another laptop.
if you want to make them to where they are online only, that's fine, but I can bring my phone, my laptop. For another month.
Is there anything wrong that if somebody at the table wants you to do the packet for them, they proactively tell you that? Otherwise, we bring it ourselves. I usually bring what's important to me. I've already read the agenda. So most of the time, all I'm doing is going through this. So it's a waste of time to make that packet for me. I'm happy to free up those few moments she spends on that for me. But there may be others here that rely on that packet when they get here. So would that work for everybody? You tell Chris or Lynn sometime between now and the next meeting what you want, and they will provide it for you. And if you don't, you'll provide us nothing, and we'll come with our own. Does that work?
I don't need it.
The only thing that I really like is at the O&P meetings, when you've got your project list and they're this long and folded up. I like to have that, because there's no way I can print something off like that.
It's even, some of the smaller things that aren't that big of a deal, but it's like, and I did it today because I didn't, everybody didn't get a copy of the sewer use regulation, and everybody, I don't think, got a copy of the proposed, physical copy of the personnel policy manual. So I went through with Amanda there. Thank you guys.
Take care.
And I did it at my desk. And honest to goodness, it does, because some people, like Lynn doesn't want a copy that is hole punch. So that's one set that we have to do. Then others, we have holes punched in it for the book. So it is. So, but providing those, something like that, we can still continue to provide anything that would be an abnormal size. We'll be happy to do that.
Everything else I can get on my phone.
Are we free to read with our own laptops? Is that all right?
I'm fine with that.
I don't think it's money that's necessary.
We'll just reach out, like you mentioned a moment ago, we'll just reach out to all the commissioners individually and find out what their preference is, but we will continue to provide, if it's an oversized sheet, we'll continue to provide a physical copy of that for everyone. Is that okay?
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right. OEA meeting regarding impact fees. I spoke to Jamie Gilbert last week, and I had totally kind of forgotten about where we were with that. But Jamie wanted everybody to know, to make sure that he knew that the ball was in his court, so he'll be reaching out sometime soon. he just wanted to make sure there wasn't any confusion that he wasn't waiting on y'all, that y'all, I think, are waiting on him. So just kind of expect that. And that goes back to that meeting when he attended back in February. Cross Creek Odors, I'm going to give just kind of a general update as to what's going on there. In the month of May, we received a total of 14 complaints. And we currently now, Johnny McCall, the gentleman that spoke here, the plant supervisor, is driving through first thing every morning between the hours of 7 and 8 o'clock, sometime during that time frame, just to see if he detects anything in the neighborhood, and he'll report back. We're going to begin this coming week having the operator that does respond do a drive through. So we'll be now going through there 7 days a week. They'll be doing that, I think, before they come and even access the plant in the morning. Correct, Kyle?
I think they go come clock in.
Okay, well, that would make sense. Yeah. Okay, so so that, we'll continue to doing that. We currently, just to let you know, that what was included in the proposed budget is, and including in this current fiscal year, is we're anticipating spending about $200,000 addressing the complaints. 100 or about 90 something, $95,000 on the pump and that equipment. Then the chemical takes it up to about 160.
12,000 a tote.
So about 150 to 160,000, and then we've got to put together the infrastructure that essentially is a distribution system of 6 and 8 inch plastic pipe that rings. I believe it rings the outside of each of the digesters. Correct, Kyle? So we're still waiting to get costs back on what that would be. But you mentioned earlier
today. Quick estimate is still be between 25 and 35,000 for piping and install.
So what? The word of caution that that I want to state here as an absolute disclaimer is, still, we're a wastewater treatment plant. There's still going to be times where there's going to be odors associated with what we do. We don't want to be bad neighbors, and we want to mitigate everything that we can, but there's no way, I don't know, that we can eliminate all odors. We're hoping there's some terrible odors that happen from time to time when we load the solids truck. Well, that'll be changing hopefully in the fall, because instead of loading using that loader, we're going to begin loading just directly from the press into a bin that's then going to be covered and hauled off site. So there won't be any more touching of it with equipment and moving it around. We're also working with an engineering consultant, an environmental engineer in this case, that's looking to see what could be the possible causes besides what we feel that is the most certain case, which is the digesters and the odors that come off of it, to find out what else we might be able to do here. But they're also looking at what other environmental factors off-site that we are outside of our control that could be potential issues as well, that's creating some odors. So in that regard, we're doing what we can, but just to kind of stand by. We'll report back once we get further information from BLE, which is the consultant that's making that evaluation. I will say that we did receive, and this was, I think, since the last board meeting, that we did receive a satisfactory inspection report. I don't know if I mentioned this at the last board meeting or not, but DES came, they did their usual thorough inspection. I've got a copy of it here. It's about 15, 16 pages long, and at the very end page says no deficiencies found. So I think they recognize we're doing all we can as far as the operational side of things. But again, we like to do better where it's realistic for us to be able to do better. So that'll be a continued work in progress, if you will. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Kyle?
No, you covered everything. What we're going to do is the best that we can do, but there's still going to be probably odors.
All right, my number 5, Executive Director's Annual Evaluation. I anticipate that you want to handle that as we did last year, which was for me to provide Mr. Bronson, as the board chair, a blank copy of my evaluation form, and he would disseminate those, and I'm assuming that they return those back to you. Is that correct? Or did they send them to Lynn? I don't know who they send them to.
You send it to me, and then I'll send it to the board, and then we'll talk about it in August.
Okay. All right, and then, a couple of miscellaneous things. So just today, not long before this meeting, a gentleman with Blue Ridge Electric showed up. They have, they would like to relocate their power distribution onto this side of the street and would require an easement from us. We don't have any objections to it. When you leave, just look along the highway, you'll see some orange stakes alongside. That's where they're proposing that they put the poles. I'll be taking the proposed easement document that they handed to me. I'm going to scan that, send it to Lawrence, and send it to our real estate or easement right-of-way attorney, have them look over, and we'll just kind of kick that back and forth between us and attorneys. But they hope to have something to us for consideration at the August board meeting. So that's where that is. And Senate Bill 829, you want to mention that one?
I think it was Mr. Albat mentioned it earlier too. So that was the legislation amendments to the enabling authorization for joint agencies, and it passed with a data spare in the legislative session, was ratified by the governor, so it is now good law and will allow some of the administrative changes that have been discussed previously for the ad hoc committee.
Did they invite you for the bill sign?
They did not.
Dang.
They did not.
That's a tough one.
Couldn't get a pen.
And then lastly, I know this has been a long meeting, a lot of information, a lot of questions asked, but I appreciate the input. I do, and hopefully we'll continue to keep doing the job that you expect us to do at the highest level that you expect us, or that I expect us to do it at. So with that said, thank you all.
All right, thank you, Chris. We'll move on now to item J, Commissioners' Discussion. Does anyone have anything they'd like to freestyle discuss? Is that freestyle time? No comments. All right, we'll move on to item K, Executive Session. Actions may be taken on items discussed in executive session. Item number 1, negotiations, incident, contractual arrangements, and receipt of legal advice, operating agreement with Oconee County. Second item, receipt of legal advice relating to litigations with Cross Creek Development of Oconee Incorporated. I'll entertain a motion to go into executive session.
I'll make a motion for the purposes as stated by our chair.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Can we have a 2-minute break?
We'll take a 2-minute break before we come back with that. Any other comments or discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we will adjourn for 2 minutes. We will come back at 6:15.
Okay, we're back on.
All right, we received the advice as noted in executive session. We do not have anything to act upon. Next item on our agenda is adjournment. Is there anyone who objects to adjourning?
So moved.
We are adjourned. I just did.